welcome to the 2022 ELT conference, the management stream. It's absolutely fantastic to see so many of you here in the room, and hello to all of you online. Up there on the camera, give a wave. There's definitely a few people here. They're not waving back yet. Turn the cameras on. Okay, anyway, it's quite disconcerting here because I can see myself actually. How exciting, isn't it? Okay. Anyway, so my name is Mark Rendell and I'm the chair of English UK. I'm also CEO of International House London, and I've been kindly invited here today to share with you some interesting housekeeping announcements. So I'd like to confirm that there are toilets in the building. There is a ladies on this floor. The gentlemen have to go to the floor above or below. There's also, I don't believe there are any planned fire evacuations. If the alarm goes off, please do exit the building. I have identified that there's a fire escape exactly there, which appears to be in use. Also through the main stairwell as well. And the assembly area is Carteret Street, which I believe is probably at the front of the building somewhere. So as many of you may know, we're probably all missing the silky delivery of Tom Weatherly, who's the face of this event for many years and much missed. But in the distant past, I used to front these kind of events as well. And the management event was always a big favourite of mine. And in the old days, 10 years ago, that's not the old days, this was a residential event. And I had a little chuckle. I was remembering my favourite residential event was held at Old Trafford County Cricket Grounds. Was anybody at that event? You remember it, Ewan?
Yeah,
do you actually remember it though?
I remember the comedian.
Okay, it was a great event, and a couple of things really stand out, because obviously in those days we put in some entertainment, and we had a virtual horse racing event in the evening. I mean, what could go wrong with that? That's quite an innocuous thing to do, but unfortunately the guy fancied himself as a bit of a bird of money, and after every race it managed to crack a few really funny jokes which alienated little segments of the room, and by the end I think we'd lost about a third of the audience. But you can always learn something interesting from any of the sessions, and I think what I learned was how to completely alienate an audience across the evening, but it was hugely entertaining, I have to say. Also, that was not the end of the evening, because one of the delegates later confided in me that he fulfilled a lifetime ambition by streaking across the pitch in the middle of the night. So that was an interesting confession. I'm very glad I didn't witness that. But anyway, so the residential events, and I do hope maybe one day they will return. But here we are, a one-day event. We've got an excellent lineup ahead, some really fantastic and on-message, I think, suitable sessions for our times. The theme of the event is strong foundations and sustainable futures. And yes, we can now face the future with some degree of optimism after two utterly horrendous years for ourselves personally and for the industry. Great programme today. I'm really looking forward to seeing all of the sessions, but particularly the final session where Matthew Burton is coming along from Educating Yorkshire. And I don't know if you remember this, but there was a wonderful, probably the most famous part of the series was there was a character called Musharraf Ashgaz, who had a speech impediment, and really incredibly inspirational time where he did a presentation in front of the class. But interesting, I researched him a little bit. He's now a motivational speaker, so isn't that an incredible story? And the power of education and support is a real affirmation of the work that we do. Also, some recognition that learning does make you hungry, so I'd like to say something about lunch. As you are all aware, today is Earth Day, and to celebrate Earth Day, we will be having some meat-free. Well, I think all of the lunch will be meat-free. So all of you at home, I hope that you can follow as well, and maybe some beans on toast while we're enjoying our massive platters. I won't go into detail. All of you online as well, please do interact through the day. All you need to do is when there is question and answers or discussion sessions, you just need to raise your hand, not the button, raise hand button, and and one of our team will bring you in and you'll be able to participate live. So we'll have a really successful, fantastic hybrid event. And talking about engagement, I just wanted to say a little bit. Today is the deadline for applications to become a trustee of English UK. So please don't all rush away and complete your application immediately. There's a great conference ahead. But thinking ahead, you know, our future trustees for English UK, there's probably a few of you in this room who may well wish to stand in the future. And I would really encourage you to get involved and to think about it seriously in the future, that you can really make a big impact. It's a great thing to be involved in. It's a great developmental tool as well. It's superb to be able to put something back into the industry. We're really seeking diversity and gender equality as well. So please do think seriously, maybe if not now, if not today, at some point in the future. So I'm going to finish off now, but I'd just like to say a big thank you to our silver sponsors, Macmillan. Obviously, sponsorship is really important to make sure that we have really good quality events today. So please do. I'm going to talk to Casimir during the breaks and see what Macmillan have to offer. Macmillan have been great friends of English UK over the years. And of course, no stranger to you all, we have Alison here from Trinity. Trinity are the gold sponsors, and again, Trinity have been fantastic supporters of English UK through the year, and partners with the English UK Trinity Delta in the past. And I'm going to call on Alison to come up and say a few words.
Am I best standing behind there, or does it really matter?
I think the vision's all the way along, so yeah, you're absolutely brilliant there.
Right, hello everyone. My name is Alison. I work for Trinity as the Head of Business Development for the UK and Ireland, and it's so nice to be in person at an event. We haven't done too many of these over the last couple of years, so great to be here. A couple of really short updates from Trinity about new resources and also TESOL qualifications, and also some charitable work that we're involved in. For those of you who know, Trinity exams are probably most popular as the graded examinations in spoken English, or the GESE exam, typically used for short stay, but we've developed a new scheme of work for the GESE exam. So this is 30 hours of material that you can kind of take. You've got lesson aims, handouts, everything that you can use. It kind of takes the place of a course book where you may not have the resources to buy a course book for a short stay course. Very communicatively focused, so even if you're not teaching to the GESE exam, quite useful. Also useful for teachers who maybe don't have a lot of experience but want some structure on a short course. So please check those out. You can download them for free. Come and see me. You can get a QR code to do that. We also have a couple of new qualifications. We have the certificate for practicing teachers. This is a level 6 qualification. We have a number of validated providers that are offering Cert PT in different specialist areas. So it could be young learners, it could be teaching business English, it could be teaching exams, CLIL. There's kind of something for everybody. I think the Cert PT is really designed for somebody maybe who has been teaching for a while, maybe not ready to go on and do a diploma level or an MA, but you kind of want that next level qualification. So it sits between Cert and Dip level. The other new qualification that we have is the certificate in online teaching. I think over the last couple of years, we were all thrown into online teaching, lots of learning and just getting on with it. So this is really designed to kind of just take it up to the next level. So you have a self-study course, and then you can bolt on a certification. At the end, it's a specialist Ofqual level 4 qualification. The whole thing, if you do the course and the certificate, is £299, so quite good value for money. If you are a school and you're looking to do 2 or more teachers, please come and talk to us, because there are discount levels if you have a small group of teachers or a larger group of teachers that might want to do the qualification. So please do come and talk to me about that. And then finally, I just wanted to talk about the Trinity Language Access Fund. We've been running the Language Access Fund in the UK for a couple of years now. And it has been originally designed for people who have access barriers to learning. So it might be for reasons of socioeconomics, it could be their settlement status, it could be race inequalities, all of that. So we have a fund set up to help support learners for their learning materials, whatever they need to learn English. And then if they want to take a Trinity qualification, they can do so. We've now extended that. We've put a substantial amount of money in to support Ukrainian nationals, and that's a global fund. So if you are involved in supporting any, doing any volunteer work or working with Ukrainians here, teachers or students, please check out the Language Access Fund, because we're quite excited about that, and to help people to learn and to learn English and to continue their learning. And I think that's all. So thank you very much. Have a brilliant day, and do come and speak to me if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Alison, for your updates and your good news there. I'd like to now turn our attention to our opening plenary speaker and invite Louise to come forward. So Louise is delivering a session on creating a safe space for everyone to thrive. What does bring your authentic self to work mean through an EDI lens? It's going to be a fascinating session, I'm sure, and you're going to offer us some really good, practical, systematic steps on how we can bring our authentic selves to work. Over to you, Louise.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all. I'm Louise, and I'm here to talk to you all about authenticity, which is a word that I think is very powerful, very important in workplace settings, but not just within the workplace, just within us as our day-to-day lives. I think we all aspire to be able to be our authentic self to the best of our ability. And it is also my mantra of words that I've been able to explore more deeper in my own personal coaching sessions, and I feel there's some gems to pass on to everyone. I'm going to split the next 45 minutes into 3 sections, and hopefully it will be a really beautiful flow for everyone. So first, exploring what do I think it means to be bring your whole self to work looks like for me personally. Why is it important, and how organisations like yourselves can support and enable their employees to do the same. So firstly, introduction. I'm Louise. My pronouns are she, her. I'm an equality specialist. I'm a bit of a geek within equality and diversity, and really big on activism and mental health and a whole bunch of other things. I'm Black, obviously, quite obvious, but I'm also a lesbian, I'm a woman, I have depression, I have anxiety, and I have dyslexia. That is basically a melting pot of intersectionalities that throughout my time, especially in the last 10 years, has been a real journey in terms of growing into what is my authentic self. And the biggest important thing is like, actually, what is my authentic self, whilst embracing each of those identities as separate entities, but also together, both within myself and then also how I interact with the world, with my friends, and within workplaces and everything in between. I'm really proud of who I am, but it really has taken me a journey to get there, to become confident in it, to really own it, and to also be very unapologetic within it as well. So I'm hoping that the next few conversations I'm going to be sharing with you kind of helps to outline that, and also gives quite a lot of food for thought for you to also take back to your organisations. So back in 2011, which now feels a very long time ago for me, I was in my student days working at UE, and it was the first time that I had what I defined as a bit of a mental health breakdown. And when I was doing this, happened when I was in one of my dream jobs as a sabbatical at my university. And I remember very clearly going to my line manager at the time and being like, look, I can't do this, I'm gonna have to resign. Like, because in my head, I didn't know that I couldn't see that you could be have severe mental health and also be a quite high up leader within an organisation. I really thought we had to choose one or the other, or if people found out that you did, then people then discredited you for being successfully being able to do your job.
My manager was absolutely incredible, and it was a very like compassionate and supportive response that I got from her, really being like, what support do you need from us? How can we help? Do you need some time off? And it was never even a conversation of like, maybe we're going to have to discuss whether or not you're fit for this job. And I think for me, that was the start of like, what does it feel like when someone embraces you as a whole person and your authentic self at work? Because the truth of the matter is, it's actually impossible to leave aspects of your life out at the door when you leave your home and then just strip everything off and just be kind of like what I would describe it as a shell of a human being if we weren't all authentic selves within workplaces. And so it was a really great moment for me because it made me realize that it was possible for me to lead an organization and be chronically depressed and anxious, which probably isn't the kind of thing you'd think. But the support that I got from my manager was all I needed to really kind of start that journey of authenticity. I had already come out as gay back in 2007, and that was a journey that kind of felt a little bit easier to do than disclosing to my manager that I was like severely depressed and half the time struggling to get out of bed, but I still showed up to work and smiled and functioned and did the job and everything. And so yeah, so this is just kind of highlighting just the different steps of like authenticity. I'm adopted. I was raised in a white family, and I've only just in the last 2 years or 3 years come into my blackness as an adult, which as a disclaimer is an absolute, it was chaotic in so many ways because I didn't realize, I knew myself quite well. I thought I was really like, I knew what I was doing, things were great. But actually, my blackness was something that was just never at the forefront of my identity. And I didn't really know how much I was missing it until I kind of was able to really discover it. My first direct experience of racism was in the workplace a few years ago. And it really felt like the most traumatic shell shock moment that I could have ever experienced. I remember my peers, my other Black peers, were like, we don't understand, like we've all gone through this. Why are you so just beside yourself from this situation? And the truth of the matter is that because being raised in a white family, I think in many ways I had been raised as white, but as being a Black person. And so I lived in this bubble in some ways in terms of what the world was like, what people was like, and it's really strange to be able to have lived in this bubble and to have indirectly benefited from white privilege. I have become very accustomed to navigating white spaces, to thriving in white spaces actually, and never seeing that as an issue. And until the incident at work of racism, that really I literally was ready to take the company to the cleaners because I was really like, this is absolutely disgusting, disgraceful. Like, how could this be happening? And all my Black friends were just there like, this is literally our day to day. Like, why are you kicking off? But I'm really glad that I don't want to say glad I experienced that. I think it was the wake-up call that I needed to come into like all of my identities. I wish it hadn't happened through that way. But like up until that point, I had become so familiar to navigate white spaces, and now I was forced to come into what it meant to be a Black person within the workplace. And up until then, because I think that I was so accustomed to navigating white spaces, I was never seen as a threat. I was very much seen as the other peers. I was never seen as a threat within colleagues and within managers. But as soon as I managed to call it out as it was, then people were just there like, ooh, like I thought you were cool. I thought you and I were having a thing. And so for me, it was like it took me like a good year to process all of that. And what came after that in terms of reporting it to management was like learning how to navigate the politics and the policies within workplaces when it comes to race and racism. And I can tell you, it's a hot mess. So if there's anything to do to actually make it easier for other Black members of staff when these things happen, please do, because it's very it does a ripple effect, not just like on the life of an individual whilst at work, but also within their personal lives too. And the more I was navigating the HR policies and the challenging the culture of the organisation, the more chaotic I realised the organisation was. How much discrimination there was, how discriminative the policies were in its as a thing, and also how poisonous institutional racism is. I know it's a word that we've all been hopefully become very familiar with, but actually the impact is some of it is very unseen to a lot of people, but it's really I think it's really jarring when you see it like face to face. I feel the race is the thing that organisations feel threatened the most in terms of how I've interacted in terms of my different identities of authenticity. And it really requires us all to do a lot of work in terms of dismantling the kind of power and privilege paradigm to really kind of make a substantive change within that. I'm next going to explore in terms of why it's so important for people to bring their authentic selves into workplaces, but as you can see is also within day-to-day lives. Obviously there's a clear business case, right? In terms of everything that is written on our company strategies, company policies, company values, is the business case of why it makes sense. Bringing your whole self to work kind of requires quite a lot of vulnerability, but vulnerability also unlocks creativity, connection, and performance. If your staff member are really, truly able to be their best selves and their authentic selves, they will give more, they will feel more connected to the organisation, they will have a space of safety, and they will be able to and empowered to thrive at their full potential. The one quote I want to share with you that I found that was really, really important to kind of like get the work going, which I think is really important, is get uncomfortable feedback before you need it. Don't think about the spaces everyone exists in. Think about the one people don't talk about. It's not necessarily safe to share what life is like outside the office, but we inevitably bring it with us. Saying your environment is welcoming is one thing, making space for it is another. And that's a quote from Johnson & Jackson, the co-founder of Liberty. I thought it was quite poignant and quite valid for today's discussion, because obviously, yes, every single organisation says that we welcome all staff to leave themselves out to work. But actually, what does that look like? What does that mean? If you were to ask, for example, the working parent, they actually say that. If you were to ask directly disabled member of staff, would they agree with you? If you were to ask the Black member of staff, would they actually agree with you that they are actually able to bring their authentic selves to work? So, yes, so the policies and strategies is one thing, but really, we really need to go deeper in terms of the lived experience of our staff. So it's really key through that in terms of for us to continuously challenge ourselves and ask ourselves, why is it important to you as an individual within the workplace and important to the organisation for your staff to be able to bring their authentic self to work? That is the way that kind of really to kind of not starting point, but I think if that's at your constant forefront, I think it will help you to give a more genuine answer and then more genuine actions on the other side. I think it's really important for organisations to be able to provide that freedom for individuals to bring their authentic selves to work. Yes, we can choose. We all have the choice to bring our authentic selves to work, like the quote says. But it is really important that not everyone can do, or not everyone wants to. So, for example, not everyone will want to come out as LGBT, queer, bi, transgender within the workplace, and that is their right to do so. Not everyone will want to disclose information about their marriage or a civil partnership, or want to share stories about their partners of what they've done over the weekend. The biggest thing about that is really important is that everyone deserves the choice and the safety to do so should they wish to disclose those pieces of information. And this should not come with terms and conditions, small print. So it shouldn't be, you can be black, but don't call out racism in the workplace. You can be trans, but actually, us putting gender neutral toilets is too much of a hassle for our facilities department, and a massive kind of like gymnastics of paperwork and policies and all those kind of things. Saying we celebrate women in leadership roles, but you leaving early to collect your child from school actually really disrupts the team's productivities. And so it's really important that we're like, okay, so when we're saying that we want our staff to be authentically themselves, are we truly, truly ready to take everything that comes with it? Obviously, it's important to share the legal case. Not a lot of people always remember the legal side to the equality and diversity. So just as a reminder, the Equality Act in 2010 is basically the benchmark of ED&I and inclusion work. So in relation to like authenticity and being able to bring your authentic self to work, it's important to actually not enabling your staff to do that in different degrees actually goes against the Equality Act, or can have a slow ripple effect into doing so. So, for example, another example of that could be having issues or policing certain Black people's hairstyles at work, or the gender expression of a colleague. Both of these could link into in terms of both race discrimination or gender identity. So it's obviously, so being authentic self is a nice thing to have, but also I feel there's quite a chunk of legalness obligation to it. And obviously, if you want to go on a more softer level in terms of HR, there's a big thing in terms of reputation and retention of your staff, which obviously is something that is really important to hopefully everybody. And especially in today's world, the reputation is more on a digital platform of people being much more open on social media, and obviously also within their networks. And so it's really important that for organizations to be aware that what happens within the workplace in terms of that culture setting and enabling people to be themselves, those experiences that individuals have does have a risk in terms of it being shared to other places. So it's really important that we work on not just our internal image, but also the public and external image as well. My last section is to tell you and share with you the kind of the how and the practical things and practical things of what it could look like to support staff members to bring authentic selves to work. Again, it's really important to remember that bringing authentic self to work is easier for some than others. And so we should never kind of force anyone to do so. But the following will hopefully help in terms of identifying some of the systems, cultures, and infrastructures in your organization to enable this to become a reality. So obviously, as I touched upon earlier, every company strategy will have a statement about diversity and inclusion and equity. I feel like literally every organization has had that, especially in the last 2 years, which links back to the Equality Act. But what I always like to challenge organizations is what actually does those words mean once you take them off a piece of paper? And ensuring that actually those words have a meaningful impact and really truly create an inclusive culture. So firstly, it's really important to again acknowledge that being authentic is easier for some. The more intersectionalities that you have, the harder it is. For example, someone who's trans is probably much harder to be authentically themselves within the workplace. And I think with that, it comes with everyone being aware in terms of the level of privilege that they hold whilst navigating workspaces and what privilege others may or may not have. So the kind of things to kind of ask yourselves and challenge yourselves on is even though you'd like your organization, everyone in your organization to be their authentic self, can your workplace actually support your staff members' whole self within the organization? Number one, in terms of HR policies, which I feel everyone is familiar with, one of the things that I've experienced is the challenges when who sits behind those workplace policies. So, for example, who is the person who writes them, creates them, implements them? And I think it's really important that people with the lived experience are behind every single step of those infrastructures. One example, one of my previous organizations, I was deep dive in a race-related HR case with my organization, and the individual that was brought into from HR to A, oversee the case, B, decide whether the case was highlighted racism or not, was someone who was white. I have many issues with that on so many levels, and again, I just want to I really want to highlight that it's not to discredit your staff members for being very qualified at being HR specialists and advisors, but it's about really understanding that actually having someone white telling a black person whether racism happened or not is completely delusional on so many levels. And so it's really important that, yes, you have those HR policies, but actually what is the structure behind them? If you don't have a member, and a lot of the time the challenge is that like, well, there isn't for example, a black member of staff in our team or an LGBT member of staff in our team, but actually how can you partner up with other organizations and institutions to kind of make sure that there's that diversity of representations within those different spaces of power, because HR holds a lot of power in terms of what happens to the welfare and well-being of your staff. And even with the utmost, I really empathize with ex-community's experience. Your decision making throughout that process will be biased and will not be formed on the right level of understanding to really truly support your staff efficiently. Secondly, staff networks or staff communities. I feel staff networks is more a thing within higher education universities, but at least staff communities and the importance of staff having a safe space where they can get together with other individuals who have similar lived experience. So, for example, a group of staff who are all parent carers or LGBT or Black or BME, etc., etc. That really helps to create a safe space for staff members to really be their authentic self, where in some ways, in a lot of ways, for a lot of staff members, there's a space where they can just breathe and be themselves without this like hyper-layered super consciousness of being super vigilant of their environment and their spaces. An example of this is in terms of it could be like a working parent of having to feel they have to apologize all the time for any situation that's happening with their child, or having to be absent last minute. In terms of within LGBT staff, it could be being able to just openly talk about your partner, or talk about any challenges that may be happening, or if it's in terms of the Black members of staff, it's about I don't know how familiar you are with the term code switching, but it's a lot of Black individuals, when walking into white spaces, they assimilate those white spaces just to not have to add any discrimination, add any experiences of discrimination or just challenges whilst in it. And so, but that level of code switching and assimilation on a constant basis within, and especially because we spend so much time at work, it's like an insane amount of time at work, it can gradually become very exhausting. So those safe spaces that staff networks provide is absolutely invaluable. But it's really important that you don't just create spaces for staff to get together for just a cup of tea. I think it's really important that there's a little bit more crunch to all of that, and that comes with ensuring that those staff groups are effectively resourced. So organisations actually put money behind it to support that environment where staff can fully be themselves. That it's important that there's senior executive sponsorships behind it. So it's not just like enjoy your little get together, but there's genuine backing from management and managers for staff members to engage and contribute to those spaces. And that can include in terms of allocating specific staff work time within the paid work time for individuals to get involved with this, and also for it to be recognised within appraisals and performance reviews, because to really see it as an integral part of being at work. Because as we said right at the beginning, you can't walk into a workplace and just forget that you have 3 children at home, or walk into the workplace and like, I don't know, like, I think for me, if I was to be in a workplace and just pretend I was straight, would be just absolutely horrific. Or pretend to have a boyfriend just for the sake of keeping a status quo when everyone's talking about their husbands and boyfriends and partners. And so that is, that I think on a staff level is so important. The next bit is in terms of wellbeing support. To be able to tackle mental health with compassion and not just following the procedures in a very black and white way, or that HR policies tend to be a lot of the time, I found. And in terms of supporting staff members to really be their authentic self, is really to understand that not everyone is the exact same thing. So not every support services within your organisation will fit for everybody. So it's really important to have culturally appropriate services that you're able to signpost or provide. So services that really understand the experience of individuals, and also understand experiences of discrimination on a equality, diversity and inclusion perspective. So this could look like having links and partnerships with organisations that specialise in mental health support for Black communities, or for LGBT communities, or for trans communities. And it's okay that an organisation can't do everything, because I think the accepting that it's okay that you can't do everything actually opens you up to actually having really creative partnerships with other people that already do the work that your staff members need, and you just need to link it up to together. The next bit is about the importance of having cultural and inclusion celebrations that can ranges from Black History Month, Women's History Month, LGBT, Disability History Month, and also all the breadth of religious celebrations. I know it can come across as if it's just like a fun lunch, on a Thursday afternoon, or just putting bunting in your staff room to celebrate that is like Pride season or LGBT month, but actually is really important for organizations to go a little bit deeper and beyond the kind of sometimes tokenistic actions that can happen with these celebrations, and really work with staff members within those communities to ask them, what would you like for Black History Month? And then when they say what they need, to do your utmost to provide that, do your utmost to kind of alleviate resources for them to make that happen, alleviate your time to bring that together, support formations of kind of like working group, because none of these activities and events in terms of celebrating culture and equality just happens out of thin air. So it's really important that there's not just the like, it'd be nice to, but actually the like, we want to, and here's what we're doing to bring that to life. It's really important to be mindful in terms of who designs those programs. I have sat in meetings when the chair of the Black History Month event was a white member of staff, which spanned me for so long, the whole meeting. And even when I challenged it afterwards, everyone was just there like, I don't understand what the problem is. But actually, there's a huge problem with it, because actually, who chairs the well, if we were to talk a general like meeting, if you strip like quality and diversity, whoever chairs the facilities meeting, for example, in the organisation, that the role of the chair has so much leverage and power to shape and direct the conversation, the outcomes, who speaks in the room, what voices are listened to, what ideas are listened to. And so it's that balance of not putting all the responsibility of the creation of those activities and days on those individuals who have those lived experience, but also the importance of making sure that you give them a microphone and you fully listen to what they're saying. But then you as an ally, if you're not within that community, to leverage your power and privilege and money a lot of the time, in terms of you have money, in terms of your budgets, to kind of support the creation of that work to happen. I think I can't talk about authenticity without talking about anti-racist initiatives, which have been at the top of every single organisation, kind of like thoughts and minds in the last 2 years. But with that, it's really important to acknowledge that this work will make some people uncomfortable. But it's important for individuals to ride through their uncomfortableness, because actually the work that happens within around anti-racist spaces supports and enables Black members of staff to be their authentic selves, to work, to show up authentically. And also, again, touching upon the previous comment in terms of like code switching and assimilating within white spaces, alleviates a lot of the burden and just sometimes exhaustion that a lot of Black members of staff experience, especially after the increase of conversation due to Black Lives Matter that happened over the pandemic. And so it's really important that we support our Black members of staff to truly feel seen, to truly feel safe, and to really ensure that the structures are made equitable within the organisation. And that also goes hand in hand with challenging microaggressions, challenging gaslighting, and gaslighting is basically not believing someone when they share their experiences and brushing it past as something else. So I hope that the following has kind of really helped you all to kind of get an understanding in terms of, for me, what I feel like authenticity looks like, and in terms of how it could look like for also your members of staff within your organisations. And just as a reminder, authenticity looks different to everyone. So it's important to allow people to tell you how they want to show up at work, and how they want to be, and how they want to be supported. But your role is to ensure that the environment within the workplace is safe enough, is supported enough, and it enables staff to kind of really thrive within your organisation. Because at the end of the day, the more staff members that thrive at the organisation, the better your organisation will be, not just in terms of the outputs of what you achieve, but also in terms of the culture of the organisation, in terms of the retention of your staff, and also in terms of like how do people feel from being part of the organisation, being at work, and I feel personally in the last few years, your work is obviously a paycheck, you all pay bills, there's electricity prices that keep going up. However, it's really important that individuals are able to also be their full authentic selves for all the reasons that I listed. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts or reflections?
I've got a question, but I don't know how it works because I'm online.
We can hear you. We can hear you. Yeah.
I can hear you.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, thanks very much. That was really interesting. I've got a question about, you know, when you were saying the fact that a white person was deciding whether or not your situation was racism, and you felt that that was completely unacceptable. What do we do if we've only got a white person available? What's your suggestion there?
Interesting. So one is to ensure that the staff member is effectively trained, and also especially trained in terms of like conversations of like white privilege, and all these kind of things, and also as much as possible to I would recommend about partnering up with organisations that specialise in terms of race discrimination if a race discrimination case comes forward, because I think I still stand to the fact that even with all kind of especially when it becomes very nuanced and complicated in terms of race related incidents, however much goodwill, understanding, I don't think controversial. I don't think white individuals within that position of deciding a HR outcome will really always be able to understand it. So I think it's really important to have also a someone in the room that also understands racism for what it is through the lived experience lens, not just the professional one.
And would you say that that stands for any of the categories that we've talked about today? So if somebody feels, you know, that they're trans and they're not being dealt with fairly, or any life situation that's not being dealt with fairly, do you think that the thing is, I'm aware that I deal with a lot of these problems in our school, and I'm white and straight, and it worries me. You know, I just want to make sure that we're being as fair as we could possibly be, and if you have sort of recommendations of people to get in touch with or organisations to get in touch with, I think that'd be really useful, please.
So I don't have organisations on the tip of my tongue to signpost to, but to answer your question, I would kind of transfer that same judgment for the others. It's a bit like if I was to put it on a gender issue, if like there was a gender case within your workplace and like your white senior colleague was telling you whether you're experiencing discrimination based on gender, you'd be like, what do you know about gender discrimination? So I think it's like, I think gender equality is the thing that everyone really resonates and understands very clearly because it's been such a long-standing one. So I think, yeah, I personally would apply that to all
okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I probably wanting that comment. What if the white person is the victim of?
What form of discrimination?
Or racial discrimination.
A white person would be victim of racial discrimination.
What white person think what? So a white child in school who is in a minority situation can never be.
Discrimination, yes, but I thought you were talking about racial discrimination.
Well, I am. I mean, you're saying that, and I think it's a valid point, that only an HR person who is black to understand racial discrimination. But what if the victim is white?
Yeah, it's not.
That's not.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
But it would be racism. Yeah.
With racism, I understand comes the whole history, centuries of history that are connected to black oppression.
It's about structures as well. So the society that we're in has a structure where white people have privilege, so you can't experience racism if the structure is not against you. It's not a question we can answer. So, yeah. Yeah.
There's actually a very good book I've read. I can't remember the author, but it's Why I'm No Longer Talking About Race. White
people about race, yeah.
And I would recommend it. It's an excellent insight.
So, for example, I don't know, like white working class boys can experience discrimination and barriers to education, but they wouldn't be experiencing race. So it's acknowledging there is discrimination happening, but it's not based on race. Does anybody else have any other questions? Yeah.
I was just, I have a purely online team, and I was just wondering if you had any practical advice around providing a safe space online, since that's our predominant space.
In terms of with the diversity then, I think I would advise about to really take the time to ask the staff members like what they need. And it does change, isn't it? Like a workplace, like
You can't
between
see
an
it,
office.
really, like you're not exposed to all conversations or even
Yeah.
between that. You might be able to glance across and be able to see that otherwise. So Slack, I guess, is our majority of our.
No, I think it's about providing making sure that your staff know that you're available for like discussions. And I think I've definitely experienced this, that microaggressions can still happen online meetings. So being online doesn't like strip out discrimination happening at all. It just helps it come out in another form, which is sometimes even harder to kind of really track and really kind of like pin down, which is actually quite challenging. So yeah, so I would recommend about asking your staff members like what support they need from you as a leader, and also encourage them to create kind of like communities as they wish. And yeah, the key thing is like asking what they need and then go from there. Yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to thank you for your speech today and register the fact that you just delivered this speech to a predominantly white audience. So that can't have been easy. And also to register the fact that diversity isn't, it's something that we should pay more attention to within this industry. So it's really great that you are bringing our attention to it. And the last thing, I think, as you were sort of saying about this book and stuff, the way that we can start with that allyship is to educate ourselves and to start reading about these books and to understand some of the questions that came up. So thank you.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. And even just what you said about like allyship and like taking time to learn. I think one of the biggest things I can give advice, like don't go to your there's real issues of like, okay, so during Black Lives Matter, every white member of staff was like, just realized like I'm so sorry for being white, like like don't do that. And also don't go to your staff members and being like, tell me what's your experience. I think there's a time and a place for that, but I think the importance is like you taking the time to learn about all these different communities. I'm aware that I'm making lots of references around race because I think that's the most being pertinent one in the last 2 years, and the one that's really close to my heart. But I think that applies very much to every single one of them about educating yourself in terms of the lived experience of the trans community, knowing what's going on. There was literally just recently about the conversion ban all over the media and press, like being really kind of like, okay, what's discussed, what's the conversation on this? Yeah, so you take some accountability in terms of learning, just to alleviate the burden and responsibility of those communities to come up with all the answers, and also educate individuals as well. So yeah, I think it's really great that you're